Sexy People podcast of Dan Frigolette. I'm joined with Boston Jock. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I know it from a small bird that your name happens to be Ken. Is it alright if I call you Ken?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I have your stats? I've never asked anybody to do this actually. How tall are you?
So I'm 5'7". I'm 180 pounds, 185 on a good day.
And length, girth?
um, 51 inches at the shoulder, 43 inches at the chest, 6 inches ish and kind of thick. I mean, what?
Fine. Um, the so wait, I know that you're taking some time out here for before you go to the gym. So I appreciate that. What is your gym regimen right now?
So I work out 6 or 7 days a week. It just kind of depends. I spend my Saturday nights at a club. So if I go really hard on Saturday night and get home at like 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, then I generally don't go to the gym on Sunday. But as long as I'm home by
Right.
like 8 or 9 a.m., I'll take a quick nap and then I'll go to the gym on Sunday. Do like a light full body circuit and then call it a day. But I work out solidly 6 days a week, do kind of a rotation. Right now, I'm seeing a trainer, so I see him Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, um, and yeah.
Well, you're fit. What's the virtue of the trainer? Just somebody to yell at you? What do you like about the trainer?
So I dropped my certifications, but I was a certified personal trainer as well. When I started bodybuilding, I started at 110 pounds. I got myself from 110 to
Wow.
180, and then I plateaued. I've hit a point
I
where
see.
I've gotten to 190, but that was like a couple of weeks, and I haven't wasn't able to
Yeah.
get myself past that. So I've started seeing a personal trainer. He's a
Interesting.
pro bodybuilder. He's competed at the Olympia level. So the idea is that that's the right kind of person to kind of shift my routine and help me get
Yeah.
to my goal, which is 220 pounds.
220. That's a different
Yeah,
guy.
I want to put another 40 pounds on this frame. It's literally two of me from when I started.
How do you come up with that number? Like, what's the?
Now that was how I came up with it. Is I wanted to double my body weight.
You just want to double you. I see. I just want to be me again. Interesting. Well, so then what is it? I mean, you spend a lot of time being naked. What does that do um, to comparative analysis like visually? Do you find that the fitter you get, the better your dick looks, or how does it usually go?
Um, well, I mean, it definitely does look better with more frame around it. But no, so I've got some fairly bad body dysmorphia. I don't actually see the change. I still see myself the same way I
I
saw
see.
myself at 110 pounds. Um, the difference is
Interesting.
that the bigger that I get and the more muscular I get, the more other people comment on it and the more other people like it, and that reinforces for me that there's a change, even if I don't see it.
Interesting.
So
Interesting. So, with the body dysmorphia and people saying things to you, you like it, but do you believe it?
Um, so I believe that other people see something that I don't, and that's
Yeah.
really actually the benefit to me, and that's the I it is motivating for me that what I'm seeing isn't necessarily real. I mean, it's real to me, but it's not
Right.
a reflection of reality. So when people tell me,
I
"Hey, you're
see.
looking a lot bigger than you were a couple months ago," like that tells me that there's change. It tells me there's progress because I don't see the
Yeah.
progress. So it's if somebody else is telling me and enough other people are telling me, then I can gauge my progress off of that.
So, do you think that when you get to your goal weight, you're going to like feel that and like absorb it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we won't know until we get there, but I think that at the point that I'm double my initial weight, I won't be able to logically deny that there's a change there. That there's like, I
Yeah.
logic dictates that at 180 pounds, I can't argue that there's 70 pounds more of me than there was when I started. But I think like at double my body weight, I have to see something. So
And what's that timeline?
that's
110
the
to
idea
180.
anyway.
What was that timeline? Yeah.
So that was over the course of 2010 to basically 2021. Um, Part of that is I was in the Navy when I started. I got out of the Navy in 2019. So the first 9 years of that, I was doing deployments. I was working, ridiculous hours. So that was a very slow progression. And then, obviously 2020 we had
So
COVID, so
you
the
can't
gyms
put on
shut
weight while
down
you're
and all of
doing.
that. It's very hard to. You can't eat enough.
I
You
see.
can't work out enough. All that stuff. So it all kind of gets in the way and slows the progress down. So it's been 12 years, but there's a lot of stuff in there that happened that inhibited progress or made the progress harder. So
Yeah, but I don't think putting 70 pounds on is a small feat for anyone. So,
no, it's
but
not.
so I do you see or talk to anybody about the body dysmorphia? Like I don't know for people that can't grasp it, just the idea that what you see in the mirror doesn't match what other people's outward progression is. How do you like discuss it with yourself? How do you deal with it? I mean, this is an extreme solution, right? Doubling in size. Um, but then,
Yeah.
again, my fear and people's fear for stuff like that is always that, like, what if I get to my goal and I still don't see anything? And then how do I deal with it then? And is there some way to mitigate that? Does talking help?
Yeah. So I'm not a big talker. I've tried therapy in the past for different reasons, and I've no disrespect to anybody in the profession. I find it to be useless. I know plenty of people that love talking to their therapists. I don't see a purpose of it. My therapist is a circular weight, about 45 pounds, and I pick it up and I put it back down again. I my method of coping with it, probably not the healthiest, was to start an OnlyFans. Well, I started
Yeah.
naughty Twitter, and then I went into OnlyFans and just for fans and that kind of stuff. So my coping mechanism is basically sex work, content creating. Um, you know,
Yeah.
People like it, people see it, people comment on it. I get noticed in clubs. I went to London, and in the middle of a nightclub in London, someone yells, "It's Boston Jock!" So, so like
Great.
for me, the coping mechanism is that I have to acknowledge other people see something that I don't, um, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I can internalize that and say, look, when I look in the mirror, that's not that is a reflection of what's going on in my head. That's not a reflection of reality, um, and so I can take that, I can internalize it, and acknowledge that other people are seeing what I'm not. So
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. I don't. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when we're pushed with stuff like this to like try to intellectualize it. It is interesting your perspective on therapy. My perspective is I've been in therapy and I identified some things and I still can't do anything about those things to stop me
sure.
from doing the shitty behavior. Um, so, but yeah, so I don't have the answer. So that's why I wanted to ask what your thoughts would be. But so a lot of things I want to ask you. Let's
Okay.
let's start with you're talking about the club. This is a an, part of the occupation, or this is just blown off steam.
A little of both. I really, really like like heavy bass music. I've started getting into house and circuit, that kind of stuff in the last couple of years. Um, so it started as kind of just a way for me to satisfy that, go find a subwoofer and stand in front of it, let it shake me. But it's also a really good
Right.
advertising tool. Like, we're this set.
Oh, I didn't think you were going to say that.
So
Interesting.
this Saturday, the club that I normally go to is having an underwear party. It's part of a normal circuit event that comes through town, and so I'm gonna go in a jock strap and a harness, and I'm gonna wiggle my jiggly bits in front of a bunch of people for a few hours, and inevitably someone basically every weekend somebody comes up like, oh hey, who are, my name's such and such, who are you? And we talk for a little while, and they're like, oh, can I get your Instagram or your Twitter? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, here, Boston Jock. And they're like, wait, you make content? Oh, very cool. And so like we get into that type of conversation. Um, and I was in Atlanta last weekend. Did exactly that. Went to the club. Gave out my Twitter and my Instagram probably a dozen or more times. And so that's a dozen or more followers that I didn't have before I went out that night. And out of that, I
Yeah.
might get a subscriber or two, or at a very minimum, like I got invited to an after party, and then at the after party, I gave it out, gave my contact info out another dozen times, and so like that kind of pools, and now I'm up, 40 followers that I didn't have, the
Sure.
day before.
So I have a weird question because I find this is a
Sure,
thing that's
I have a
kind
weird
of
answer.
plaguing the dating site kind of world where somebody will put their content on a dating site, and I think that upsets people. So almost to the extent where it's like, oh, is it false advertising? Like you're on Tinder and you're trying to pump your content. Is Do people feel that it's the same kind of thing where, I mean, you're at the club, you're not necessarily advertising yourself as a single person, but do people get disappointed, or do they think that it's not fraudulent, but kind of, I guess, do they get disappointed when they find out that you have a page and maybe that's like the goal of the hang and not that you're like there looking for ass?
So, generally, I would say no. Generally, people actually are very receptive to the fact that I make content. And because in a lot of ways it's like, hey, look, here's what it's like with me in bed, in case you were curious.
Right.
um, but
Right.
there are people obviously that their interest in me and their interest in coming up to me was try and take me home, and that's not out of the question, by the way. That's perfectly on the
Okay.
table. um,
Right.
it's just I'm very particular in who I sleep with, on and off camera.
Yeah.
So it's there are people that will just just like with somebody who doesn't create content. There were people who come up to you and want to try and take you home, and you're like, yeah, no, sorry. Um, and then there's
Right.
other people that
Right.
I'm like, all right, let's. I mean, there's a dark room over there. You want to like not beyond that. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good answer. I like that. I do like that responds to the nature. So you were in the Navy, you said, for a decade. Is that, did I do that math right?
six,
And
16
then
years.
when you're in the Navy, sorry, the lag got me there. Sorry.
Uh, uh,
You were in the Navy
six,
how long?
16 years.
16 years. Wow.
16.
Um,
Yeah.
16. Um, and while you're in the Navy, are you out personally?
No, I was not. The I was
You
very,
were
very
not.
much in my closet up until the last like 2 years. Um, the last couple of years I came out, that was the biggest mistake that I ever made. I don't recommend it to people. Some people I know are very happy with that decision. It was probably the worst decision I made in my career.
You came out in the military and it didn't go good.
Correct.
Okay. What was the immediate like disappointing response that you didn't anticipate?
So I came out well after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. I came out on a vessel where I thought that everybody was fairly open and accepting, and I should have trusted my instincts on it. But I very quickly faced some aggressive homophobia. I was one of the senior most people on that vessel, and very, very aggressive homophobia from the lowest levels of the chain of command, um, and the few people that were above me, um, people that I
Right.
thought were open or at least would be respectful, were not at all. So it was very disappointing the way that people decided to handle that.
Interesting. Can you, how do I ask this for as a civilian? Can you use your status and your hierarchy to your advantage to squash that kind of like behavior or remark?
I tried very, very aggressively to do that. And
You did.
unfortunately, with the military, when you don't have the support of the people above you, you lose. Um, and I tried jumping over them, and I got squashed. So yeah, I chose to separate from the military and not have that be a part of my life anymore. And honestly, the best
Wow.
decision that I made. So it worked
But
out. The
that
grass is in
process was
fact greener on the other side.
and that process was 2 years?
Yep.
So it was 2 years of donkey do,
Yes. Yes. It was very
judgment
much 2 years
and
of,
not
of
good stuff.
extreme unpleasantness in my life. Yep.
Wow. So you say the grass is greener, it's a good decision, but prior to that, obviously being out is the larger goal and the better position to be in from a life perspective. Um, but before that, had you anticipated making the Navy be your lifelong career?
No, I'd always intended to do 20 years and then separate at the end of 20. Because that's you get a retirement, there's a pension after 20. That would have, it's not a big pension. It's not what people try and make it out to be. But it would have been, enough to pay a mortgage and all that. Um, so I think if I remember correctly, my pension would have ended up being somewhere right around $23,000 a year. And so, you know, the decision to get out at 16 years was not a insignificant financial decision, but it was well worth it, and I have zero regrets. I do not miss that.
Yeah. Okay. I know you said previously on another podcast that there was um, homosexual behavior on boats. You know, when you get a bunch of guys together and they're at sea or they're unable to sort of go out and socialize, that kind of stuff happens. Um, I don't know the way it was described in another interview. Kind of felt more like jail rules than like people having tendencies. Which one do you think it is? I guess is the question.
Yes. Um, there 100% were people that were there just trying to, get their rocks off. Um, I know personally several people who are very heterosexual, very um, you know, very into their you know, heterosexual relationships. They're, women are all they're interested in. But after, a couple of months at sea where, 60, 70 days, you're around a bunch of guys and the only thing you have is a stack of porn, and that porn gets bored after a while. It gets boring after a while. You get a little bit more adventurous or a little bit more desperate to find a way to release. And I know some people that, chose the option of, a mouth's a mouth, or a hole's a hole, and maybe I don't pay attention to what it's connected to. um, and so they maybe not, maybe they will never go that direction again, maybe they never intended to go that direction, but desperation puts people into interesting moods and interesting willingness levels to explore things.
Yes.
So
So you said that you weren't out during that time. So did you feel like that's who you were? That you were the guy who just needed to bust in a mouth?
oh no, I was the guy who was terrified to even approach that method. I I never messed around on the boat, because I knew that I was gay. Because I knew that. So I have some friends that actually did jail time because under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, if you were discovered to be a homosexual, if you were, especially if it was on a military base or involving a military vessel, they could absolutely throw you in prison. And I know people that did brig time and did jail time because they were found um, having sex on the base, not on the vessel, not on anywhere that, like, they were on the, just because they were on the base. Um, they were put in jail for homosexual behavior because we all had to sign a paper that said we acknowledged we were not homosexual and would not engage in homosexual activities. it's a page in my service record. So I have friends that did jail time, and as a result, I was petrified of anybody even suspecting that I was gay. Um, there are people that I served with for years that I considered very close friends when I was, serving with them, who had no idea until, you know, 2019, 2020, when I got out of the Navy and then, announced that I had a fiance and that I was, that I'm gay. And that was where
Yeah.
someone were like, wait, hold on. You're gay? Yeah, yeah, I am. So yeah, I never get engaged in
So
any of
interesting.
that.
Homophobia
Um,
is so like hilarious and awful simultaneously because it's just so ignorant. It's that there would be a law or a rule or a piece of paper is mind blowing. So I misunderstood then. So
yep,
I guess my question was more about your own self understanding while you're in the Navy. You were aware that you were gay. This was not a thing that you were denying about
yes,
yourself. This was just something that you did not want to be out in public. And as a
yep,
result, people are having um, hetero questioning, possibly gay sexual experiences that you don't want to be involved in because you're authentic and that could fuck it up for the rest of your career. That's wild.
yes. Yep. Yeah, I knew of stuff going
That's
on.
wild.
I knew they
Yeah.
were they were doing it, and I could not bring myself to be a part of it because, if somebody actually suspected that I was actually gay and not just experimenting or not just, trying to bust a nut, um, I was petrified of the results.
What a weird psychology that like you're worried that um
Right?
you'd hook up with somebody and be so good at it and so impassioned about it that they would know that it was authentic. And that's scary. That's so scary. Um, I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. That's such. It's like a weird purgatory in a way, right?
Yeah.
Because there's like you have all these relationships, things are going on, but you can't partake because of all of the factors.
Yep.
Um, That's wild. Um, so you had no experience in the military where you were just out and everything went smooth. It was immediate turmoil and then figuring out why did it take 2 years to leave, and when did you decide to leave, and then how does that even work? Can you decide to leave, or do they have to decide for you, kind of thing?
So you've got really kind of two options. The first is you wait until the end of your contract, which is what I did, because we're contracted for a set period of time, and then a lot of people reenlist and extend that that contract gets extended out. The other direction is that they can choose to separate you for some cause. So they can decide that if you broke a rule, if you did something egregious enough, they can kick you out. So, my choice to separate was that at the end of my contract, I would not be extending. I would not be moving forward with my military career, and that in and of itself creates problems because people figure that out about a year out when you don't submit your paperwork to reenlist, and you don't, express any interest in, what your next orders are going to be, where your next duty
Oh.
station is. Um,
Yeah, how
so
gnarly. So for a year where you would be asking the promotional questions, you just don't, and people start to understand what's going on. Interesting.
Yeah. And I didn't hide it, right? At that point, we were a year into me being the target of some very aggressive homophobic behavior. So I was very clear about the fact that I would not be staying in. I would not be extending. There was no question. There was no negotiation. I was getting out. And, that was received poorly. So on top of everything else that was going on, that was an undercurrent of, well, I'm not staying in anyway. So why would they put in any effort to temper their behavior?
I see. So because you're not staying, they it was more license for them to act shitty, you're saying?
Yes,
Because there's less consequences moving forward because you can't block their career.
because right, I'm not staying in, so there's nothing that I can do, to either block their careers or to, make life difficult down line. Um, I wouldn't, I was not going to be advancing any. There was no chance that they were going to work for me in the future. So there was
Yeah.
no reason for them to, you know, behave in, they had to keep it below the point where they could get in egregious trouble for it. But as long as they weren't doing anything, as long as nobody took me and beat me out back, which is a little hard to do because I'm, not a small guy, they weren't going to get in trouble for anything. So, um,
So
they
I
had a
guess that
very
was going
low
to be my
bar to keep
question.
as far as staying out of trouble.
So you're not getting beat on, you're not getting jumped, nothing like that. It's comments, it's shitty behavior, it's general attitude. It's now you have an understanding where it's coming from, that it's coming from hatred and bigotry, and it just hangs there for a year, 2 years.
Yep, yep. And the people that I worked for would do nothing about it. The people that I worked for that were also acting in this way were, they would assign me extra work to do. They would, when we would normally help each other because there's so much work. And if we're in a situation where I'm overloaded, usually somebody would pitch in and help take up some of the slack. They were aggressively not doing that. But they would make a point of, rather than helping, they would take the route of trying to counsel me or get me in trouble because I wasn't doing all of the work, even though, like,
Ah,
the way that the system was set up is that we would, people at the same level would share workloads when one person became,
right.
unduly loaded up. Um, and so they chose the path of just hammer me from all directions, and not in the good way.
Yeah, it's like office politics at its worst. Yeah. Not in the good way. The
Yeah.
I lost track of what I was gonna say. The So what kind of vessel were you on, and what was your role in
So I
the
was on
Navy?
submarines. I was on four different fast attack submarines.
Is it
My job initially was
nuclear
operation of the nuclear
thing?
reactors.
Okay, nice.
Yep, nuclear powered submarines. My job was actually operating the reactor, and then for the last 10 years of my career, my job was supervising the operation of the reactor and running the department that was responsible for the reactor plant operations. Um, so I'm a nuclear engineer by background.
Oh shit. That was something that the military trained you to do?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. All my
And are you
training
are
was
you
was
using
through
that
the
now?
military. Sort of. So I am an operations trainer at the electric utility company. I'm leveraging the engineering and the electrical side of it. Um, my primary role is adult education. So I teach people, I train people in a highly technical field. So I leverage part of that experience for it.
Okay. Um all right, so we've alluded to a couple different things, from the content creation um, to hooking up and some of this stuff. What do you, as a sex worker, what's your first like bullet? Content creator?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I know you'll do private parties, you'll do things like that. Um, do you consider that part of the same role?
No, well, yes and no. I mean, it's all kind of under the same umbrella, but obviously
Yeah.
my first focus and my primary is the content creation. Um, but I do, as a result of that, I get asked to do things like private parties or escorting or that kind of stuff. Um, and so,
Okay.
so it's kind of a result of the content creation. But yeah, I do bachelor
Yeah.
parties. I've gone and I've done a couple of really fun bachelor parties. I typically stay away from anything that's like one on one, mostly because the people that approach me to do that are looking for like the dollar store version, and I'm not the dollar store kind of guy.
Explain that.
So, for example, I actually got a message on Twitter the other day that was someone asking me to go and spend a couple hours with them. We did not get to the details of what they were expecting, but we can all guess. Um, and they were like, well, I'll pay you, $50 to come over and spend a couple hours with me. Well, um, no, uh, I, um, I, I, not to sound pretentious, but my day job pays me very well. I don't do this because I am, trying to put food on the table. I don't make enough money off of the OnlyFans and the go-go dancing to like pay the bills. I have a day job, um,
Yeah.
and
Would
so my time is like my time is valuable. Um, that's, I'm not I'm not
would
doing
you want to
$20 an
though? Would
hour.
you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so then that brings a couple questions. Would you want to, one, and then two, what would the right price be?
So that, I mean, the the right price always is going to, depending on what is expected and what the
Yeah,
arrangement is. I've been offered
yeah,
some. I've been given some very generous offers to go fly somewhere. I had an offer that the gentleman wanted to fly me to another city. Had me spend the weekend with him. He was paying for all the travel. The financial aspect of it was quite generous. Um,
yeah,
Basically equated to one of my paychecks for the weekend. Um, and
yeah,
I get paid every 2 weeks. He was going to pay me about the same amount that I would
yeah,
take home from that. Um, Very generous. I totally would be on board with that. Um, I'm not selling my booty hole for $50. It's not going to happen.
yeah.
So
Well, what if you did
it's a
that trip? Is
conversation.
there an
It's a
expectation that you have to have sex?
So, that kind of, we never got to that discussion point. We get to the part
Yeah,
where, I wanted to know what his expectation would be, and I was trying to verify that I'm
yeah.
not flying out to meet someone who's going to murder me. And he cut off communications at that point. So um, I may have dodged getting
The fifty
murdered.
dollar
I
guy,
don't
but the
know.
but
Maybe I'll never know.
yeah.
No,
Oh,
that was the very
wait.
generous guy. When I got,
Oh,
because
oh, you didn't do
I
it.
asked to verify identity and all that kind of stuff. No, I didn't.
Yeah, of course.
No, 'cause, like we
Wow.
got to the discussion point. It was like, I do need to verify who you are. That Mr. Faceless profile approaching me on OnlyFans. So if I can get a social media profile, if I can get anything that tells me who you are, and complete
Yeah.
silence after that. So we
Right. Well, and
we
you
stopped
should
that.
ask for a
Um,
deposit right out of the gate then.
Well, yeah,
Unrefundable
so
deposit
that
for
is one of the
wasting my
things.
time.
Like, I mean, so that is one of the things. Like, if I'm going to travel, we do a deposit ahead of time. One, enough to pay for my round trip ticket, um, and then you know discuss what's expected, discuss what the arrangement is.
Yeah.
Some of that gets a little dicey because you can't, I can't accept money for sex. That's problematic in many states in
Right.
many ways. Um, but I can accept money in exchange for my
And
time, and
federally.
then if
Yeah.
right, um, so I can go and I can spend my time with somebody and be compensated for that time, but we can't approach the level where we're discussing or even alluding to sex for money.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so that's
I guess the question then is, um, because of that sort of loophole, then does that it makes it more that the discussion is about if I want to, then I will, and that it's not an expectation, and if I choose not to, then that's also fine.
yeah. I mean, we're all adults, so realistically, if someone's approaching me to try and get me to go spend time with them for a weekend or for a night, that we all know exactly what their expectation is. Um, it is rare, and I have friends that do this more often. That that's not the case. Where the expectation is like, gentleman needs a date to a party, wants some arm candy,
Right.
and that's what the deal is. I have
Yeah.
plenty of friends that do that. Um, I haven't had that ask yet, but it's it. We can make a general assumption that if somebody's approaching a sex worker, a content creator and asking them for,
Yeah.
hey, I want you to come up for the weekend and spend, Friday night and Saturday night with me at my house. Like, we all know what the ask is there. Um,
But as the commodity, doesn't that mean that you have to be wined and dined and not necessarily convinced, but that it had the conditions have to be right, not that it's just pay to play. Is that fair?
I mean, invented Viagra for a reason.
Fine, fine, fine. So in the other interview, you talked quite a bit about your piercing. They call it Prince Albert. I don't know why. Do you know why they call it a Prince Albert?
I don't remember the history behind the name. I had looked into it at one point. I don't recall. I don't remember what the background on it
Uh,
is.
I just I just did my research, and I don't the most recent content. You don't necessarily have the ring in. Are you taking it out for content specifically? Is something going on? Did I just catch a wrong wave of content? Are you keeping it? What's going on?
So I take it in, I put it out. It varies on the day. It varies on my partner. There are some people that are not comfortable with a 3/4 inch metal ring being shoved inside of them. Um, I just filmed with somebody who I will not name because while I kiss and tell, I don't, bloopers and tell. I had this guy,
Yeah.
very, very hot guy that I had, um, he was giving me a blowjob. Um, and I grabbed the back of his head and I stuffed him down on it like I do with a lot of people. But the ring hit just right in the back of his throat that he threw up everywhere. Um, Very unattractive, kind
Oh,
of hilarious. I felt bad. He felt
I
bad.
thought
We
it
had
was
to
gonna
go
be worse.
shower. It was a thing. Um, so I took the ring out and then we reset and we started again. There are people who've had
Okay.
injuries because irresponsible tops
Sure.
use the wrong kind of piercing. And so, I've had partners that say, like, I really want to film with you, but you are not keeping that in. So I'll take it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, for me, it's a metal ring through my penis. Like, sometimes that's gonna chafe,
Yeah.
sometimes that's gonna like just not be comfortable. So sometimes I'll take it out for me, but a lot of times, like, I'll film it, and so sometimes I'll film like back to back. One of the scenes that you probably saw on my Twitter that I just released a teaser for, I fucked a guy, flipped over, he fucked me, I flipped him back over, and I fucked him again. I can always do one round with it. Usually the second round, it starts to get a little irritating. So if I'm doing,
Okay.
if I'm doing a couple scenes back to back, I'll take it out for the second one and the later ones. I'm also multi-orgasmic, so if I'm going to do multiple rounds with the same person back to back, then I'll take it out, part of the way through. Um, it all depends.
Yeah. Wait, what does it mean to be multi-orgasmic?
So I can fuck somebody, come, keep fucking them, and then come again, and then keep fucking them, and then come again
Okay.
without a
Do
break.
you lose
Um,
stiffency? Is that a word? That's not a word.
no, generally it's
Does
volume
your dick lose
that goes down.
consistency? Okay. Yeah.
No, no. Sometimes it will. Like, a lot of it depends on the dynamic, the chemistry between the person. But I filmed
Yeah.
with Jason Luna back in March, and I
Yeah.
went 6 rounds. We did a quick water break between 3 and 4, I think. Um, but I just kept going, and I
Yeah.
stayed hard the whole time. There was no kind of like, oh, the I need a break was I'm literally dehydrating because I sweat a lot, and
Sure.
so we stopped, grabbed some water, and kept going. But it's um, yeah, there's I don't really have a refractory period, which is what that's called, like where you have to like get soft and then get hard again. Um,
Yeah.
with some guys, we'll stop, we'll cuddle, and then I'll be like, oh well, it's hard again, bend over. Um,
Great. So
so it's fun.
the the piercing, um, the piercing is irritating after a certain period of time. What's the
It
What's the
can be.
upside? Is there an
It
added
changes the
pleasure to
sensation.
your end on this thing?
Oh yeah, so it changes the sensations for both parties. It's definitely something I recommend
Yeah.
trying as a like for people that are bottoms, I definitely recommend trying a Prince Albert at least once. It's a whole another ball game. And so, like for me, I love having it tugged on. The sensation of pulling on that piece of skin that it's a very heightened sensation for what you normally get. Because most guys like
Interesting.
the underside of the penis, that area right there is highly sensitive. There's a very you know it's very pleasurable. When you add the ability to tug on that, or you add something moving there, it's significantly
Wow.
bigger sensation, more sensation. Um, the flip side, for the bottom, most guys like bottom before like you can feel there's a penis inside of you. It's a thing. With the ring, you can feel exactly where that ring is inside of you. There's no like feeling it. It's like
Interesting.
I know precisely where that ring is. So it adds
Yeah.
a different level of pleasure to the bottom, who's like now your attention is dragged straight into where that ring is and where it's moving. Um, you can track it the whole time it's in there. Um, so it's
Track
a
it is
different
such a
sensation for
funny.
both parties. Um,
Yeah. So the so I guess I don't even understand the piercing. So I know when you pre-explained it, it's that they put a rod and they pierce you from underneath. So they pierce
yep.
into the urethra. So are you like are you coming out of the piercing hole? Is that a dumb question?
It does come out of both holes. Yeah.
No shit.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
do you have any say in that? Like, do you have any control over that? How do I ask that?
Not it's not really something you can control. It really comes down to like this is going to sound like a super nerdy, but it comes down to basic hydraulic principles. If you take fluid and
Yeah,
you
I was
push
gonna
it
say
through,
velocity.
if you take fluid and you push it through a straw, right? It's going to come out the end of the straw. If you poke a hole at the bottom of the straw, it's going to come out of whichever hole, or both holes, but it's going to distribute the pressure across both of them. Um, like
So
when I pee, I can
so what does that
plug
do
one
for
of
an
the holes
orgasm?
with my finger. I shoot less far. That's about the only difference.
Okay. But what does it do for the
That's about it.
sensation? Is it a nice sensation coming out of two holes that you
I
didn't
don't really
anticipate?
feel it. I don't really feel it coming out of like I don't really feel spelling out of one hole or the other. Um,
Okay.
since like the sensation for me is more centralized, inside rather than where it's coming out. Um, so it's just
Interesting.
kind of an added
I'm just
like
I'm listening. Sorry.
so I mean, it's just kind of like an extra place that it comes out. The only real change is that I don't shoot as far as I used to. I'm not going to hit myself in the face with it when I come. It's it might make it to my chest, and then
Which
there will be some oozing out on my hand. But
yeah. Which that's also nice. Um, was that a change that you knew was coming? Not to be punful.
it, I mean, it's a change I wasn't that I like. I knew that it was a thing. It was going to happen. It wasn't something that I really thought
Yeah.
through. It's kind of like
Yeah.
you know taking a leak, I didn't really think about the fact that, I'm now going to have two streams that I have to worry about. Or if I have the ring
Interesting.
in, then basic hydraulic principles say that water tracks the surface based off of surface tension. So I now have a water wheel of doom when I try to go pee. Uh, so things like,
When the ring is
standing up
in,
to
it
pee at
just
a gas
goes. I
station
see.
bathroom, yeah. So that doesn't really exist anymore. Like urinals are sometimes okay. Um, at home, I just sit,
Yeah.
sit to pee because I'm
I
not
love a
dealing with
sit
that.
to
It's
pee
just a pain in
anyway.
the ass.
Yeah. So one of the things that you described when they did it was they put a rod in your urethra. And what's it? And then I heard you talk about in another interview. What's that pressure called? There's a term for that that experience?
For like when they put the rod in.
Yeah, you call it like sound rodding, and you already enjoy
Yeah,
sound
just
rodding. That explain that to
yeah,
me.
it's sounding. So sounding is there's you take a rod, either metal. Some people use glass, which I do not encourage, or like silicone. So and you insert it down the urethra, and sometimes those rods are short, sometimes those are much longer, and it gets its origin from a catheter, to be blunt.
Sure.
And so like the long silicone ones, I've got a set in the other room. You stuff it down and like you can put it all the way in, and it gets all the way to your bladder. Um, the metal ones, it's similar to a urethral dilator, so it stretches the urethra out. And
Yeah.
so you just metal rod in, kind of stretch things out a little bit, wiggle it around. You can hit the prostate if you're using the right type. Um, and so that's really all it is to for the piercing is they take it's a it's a rod, it's just hollow, and they stuff it in there and then they pierce
Yeah.
into that rod so that they don't poke through the other side.
Yeah, but I wanted to talk about the pleasurable version of what you're talking about, and how do you
Yeah.
discover that? And I mean, I think that there's a couple of things that are horrifying to people in general and men from being a kid. And number one is like anything happening to your eyeball, and then the other one is anything going into your pee hole. So how do you get to the place where you're like, this? It seems like an experimental area. Did it happen sort of like naturally through research? Like, how does that happen? And then you have paraphernalia, so this is a thing that you're involved in um, often.
Yeah, so the internet's a magical thing. I I have discovered most of my kinks and fetishes either through the internet or through friends, or playmates. And
Yeah,
so sounding is one of those where I saw it on the internet and I went, huh, interesting. And then I saw on one of my favorite websites when I think I was shopping for a cock ring at the time. And I saw like they had a cheap set of you know silicone sounds, and I was like, well, that might be. It's cheap. It's something. I can give it a shot, see if I like it. As I saw it, it looked kind of fun. And then so you buy the cheap version, and you're like, okay, maybe this is something that's for me, and so you buy the more expensive version, and so now I've got like a 14-piece metal set with a whole bunch of different sizes, and you can graduate up, and they're like that long, and
like a
so
butcher.
yeah, so you just put a little bit more money into your hobby, and find out what you like and
Right.
what you don't, and um, yeah.
Explain, like describe the sensation then.
Um, so it's one of those things where like you can feel exactly where the end is. It is stretching your urethra out, so it's you can feel that expand as it goes in. But then like when you go in far enough, you actually get to the point where because the prostate abuts the urethra, and so like when you get to the point that you actually stimulate that, it's very similar to if you're using a prostate stimulator or somebody reaches in inside and grabs a hold of your prostate. It's that same kind of sensation where you're like, oh, that's there. Um, and so you can, self-stimulate the prostate that way. Um,
And then coming while sounding is possible,
yeah,
not
it's possible.
advisable.
No, it's possible. It's depending on the level that you're at, and the size of the sound that you're using and what you're used to, and whatnot. If you're like, I would not use the largest sound that I'm comfortable with to make myself come. Because then that can cause like a back pressure, and you can get some complications. They're not like that serious, but um, like I'll stretch using different soundings to the sound rods to the point that I'm comfortable with, and then back down a couple if I want to keep it in while I come. I don't typically do that just because that's not my particular style. Um, I use the sounding rods to pleasure myself, to kind of self stimulate, and then I'll pull it out and I'll finish jerking off. But you certainly can do it You just want to, be a couple sizes down. So there's some room for your urethra to stretch around the
Interesting.
rod and allow the fluid to pass.
Interesting. I should have asked this earlier. I have so many more questions. The first time you do it, is it like, I don't want to use horrifying, but again, I'm still stuck at horrifying.
It's new, it's different, it's um, depends on it depends on how much it interests you, how much you want to try new things. Um,
Yeah.
if you're not an adventurous person and you're like, oh my god, why am I doing this? Then it's not going to be as fun. It's going to be a little bit more horrifying. But if you're adventurous and you're like, I want to
Yeah.
see, I want to see what this is all about. Like it's exciting. It's interesting. You know it's it's a different style of pleasure. So it's like for me that in and of itself is pleasurable. Like finding new things that
I
cause me
see.
pleasure.
That's fair. Is it more of a solo thing, or is this a play with others thing?
For me, it's more of a solo thing. There are two people that I could think of names off the top of my head who I would allow to sound me. Um,
Yeah.
it's that's one of those things that requires a level of trust and a level of intimacy. That's
Yeah.
not just like, oh, we're gonna go hook up. Like if I'm gonna go hook up with someone, they're not sticking anything inside of me, inside of my dick.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's
Yeah.
one of my friends who I've got a friend that I let him tie me down to his bed, stick an East End kid on me, and crank it all the way up. Loved it. I'd let
Yeah.
him sound me. But that's the level of trust we're at, where because you are sticking something inside of a place that's arguably not intended to have things stuck inside of it.
Yeah. Well, then, so then, do you have any content with it? And then, have you seen any content with like, I don't want to call it Chinese finger sound, but like, where it's like
Yes.
double-sided sound? Has this content exist?
Yeah. Yeah. The
All right,
content's out
I'll
there.
leave it there.
Um,
Um,
yep.
you you got to go train, and we want to get you up to 220 because that'll like each time you make this headway, I think it'll be interesting for your content and for us, the viewer. How do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we? I can't put links in the comments anymore because it gets us banned. So let's say them, of how we can get you money and how we can pay for your content.
Yeah, so easiest way is to look me up on Instagram or Twitter. Instagram is Boston Jock, Twitter's Boston Jock Triple X, if I can speak. Both of those profiles have a link it's a MySlink app. It's myslink.app/Boston Jock. It's in the profiles. That has literally everything. It will bring up this little pop up that shows my OnlyFans,
Perfect.
my Just for Fans, my For My Fans, my Amazon wish lists, my Cash App. Everything is in there. And so, it's easiest way, jump on Instagram, jump on Twitter. Instagram again is Boston Jock, Twitter's Boston Jock triple X, and that's the best way to get me.
Perfect. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for your time. Um,
Yeah.
and This is Sexy People Podcast. We have a new episode dropping every Monday. This will be this Monday. We'll break up into content. We have it on YouTube. We're on Google Play. We're on iTunes. Wherever you are, we are also there. Check out our content on Instagram, PSAP Pod. And then please follow this gentleman. I have to interview you like 3 more times. I have many more questions to ask you. I appreciate your time. I
Perfect.
appreciate you being here. And thank you so much.
Hey, thank you for having me.